So I've been listening to podcasts for several years now, and I always think, why don't I just make my own? But then another thought comes to me. How am I going to film it? What am I going to film it with? And who am I going to film it with? Well, let's talk about that today on Tech Tuesday. First of all, we need an idea for your podcast. Do you want to do a podcast about your grandma's cooking recipes? And if that's the case, then you can invite your grandma to do a podcast with you. That'd be fun, right? Maybe you don't want to do a podcast with your grandma. Maybe you want to do a podcast where you tell a story to your audience. Or maybe one where you solve mysteries. Like the mystery of why is my floor cracking whenever I'm laying down in bed. It always scares me, and if you can tell me why it does it, that'd be great. Or maybe you just want to do a podcast talking about video games. All of these are fun ideas. So now you have your idea for your podcast. Now you have to do is stick to it. That means in the middle of your podcast, if you're talking about video games, keep talking about video games. It's okay to ramble on about something. Same with your grandma's cooking recipes. If you're doing a podcast with your grandma, it's okay if your grandma wants to tell a short story about something. Just be sure that that story doesn't control the rest of that episode. So let's say you're talking about your grandma's apple pies. I don't want to be hearing about cherry pies. I'm there to learn how to make grandma's perfect apple pie. Another tip is be consistent when you upload. Let's take Tech Tuesday for example. I upload this series every Tuesday. Same way you should do with your podcast. If you release 2 episodes every week, then get those 2 episodes out every week. Don't upload one week and then 3 weeks later have another episode, because then your audience is going to be wondering, where'd you go? So just don't go disappearing on them. And if you need to, be sure to let them know. But let's say you don't have that expensive equipment. You don't have a fancy shotgun mic or a lavalier mic or anything like that. Well, that's all right. All you really need to start with is your phone. So, just take your phone close to you, lay it down close to you. Don't hold it in your hands, because then you'll generate some sound moving your hand around. Lay it down, get it nice and close to you, and then just record audio. Now just keep in mind, it may not sound the best, but over time, you can always get better equipment. Your first episode or your first few episodes are unlikely to score you 1 million subscribers, so just keep that in mind and just have fun with it. So now I think it's actually time for us to do a podcast. Let's see how it works. Detail, resolution, and frame rate. So, with the PS4 Pro, you get increase in frame rate and you get increase in resolution and detail. So, that's all the things that the PS4 Pro does. Just got back from that podcast, man. Was that fun? You should listen to that down below. You'll see it down in the story. If you go to the holler.org, click on the story and you'll see it down below. So, now that we have our podcast filmed and recorded, we need to talk about editing it. And there's free programs like Audacity where you can take your recordings into the program. Let's say you recorded 4 people, so that means each person had their own shotgun mic or lavalier or whatever. Just be sure when you started filming the podcast that you clap your hands like this. Yeah, okay. That way you'll see in Audacity that there is a sharp point that you can adjust, you can synchronize all the sound clips together. That way everyone's talking about the same thing at the same time. That way you don't have one person talking about tomatoes when you're supposed to be talking about potatoes. So if you had any issues while you were filming your episode, you can always go back. You can cut some blank space. If the microphone's glitched out or someone said something they shouldn't have, you can always just cut it and you can edit it together and act like that never even happened. So just be sure to edit out your mistakes. If you need to bump up your audio levels a little bit so people can hear you when they actually play it, be sure to do that. And also, if you want to add in some music at the beginning or any fancy sound effects, Audacity's the way to do that. And the same goes for if you did a video podcast. You can take the video and the audio straight into programs like Adobe or Windows Movie Maker or whatever editing software you have, and you can edit the video podcast and the audio podcast at the same time. So that way you can just export the audio by itself without the video, and that way you can upload it to sites like Podbean and whatever type of podcast sites you want to stream it to. And so that's it. So now that you have your podcast edited, you can take it online, take it to Spotify, SoundCloud, whatever website you want to upload it to, you can. Video podcast, upload it to YouTube and Vimeo or whatever website. But that's it for today. So I'm Adrian, and I'll holler at you later.